here just doing a quick recording for some of the processes and steps we went through in today's class to prep our file for our nonprofit flyer design. So I opened up the flyer template that we were using as our template for our flyer. And so remember we talked about I'm going to remove the background because this was a space holder. We talked about this being your bleed line, this being your document edge, and this being your internal margins. The first thing we did is we went in and we adjusted the columns and we made them 7. So we have more vertical lines or guides to align our elements in. And just as kind of a preface, you can see the smart guides. We actually can move this around and snap them to the guides. So when we're doing just a one-off, a one-page flyer, poster, advertisement, I often will set up my columns to be multiple columns, which gives me more vertical alignment spaces for the elements that I'm creating inside my design. So we went in and adjusted those. Remember, the red line is the bleed line, the black line is the document edge, and the pink and purple lines are the margins. And remember, we went into our pages to remember that the right master is the master for page 1, and the left master is the master for any even pages. Now remember from the pages palette that the vertical line here on the left edge of our document is the fold line. So that would be where we would be folding our document in a multi-page saddle stitch environment. Remember, it's called 4 up, which means 4 pages printed on one side of the piece of paper, duplex 4 pages on the other side for a total of 8 pages. So when you're doing multiple pages inside of a publication, annual report, programs, it's good to keep it in an 8-page sequence, 8, 16, 24, and so forth, because that is the most cost-effective and easiest way for print publication. If you're doing it as an online PDF, then that number gets thrown out the door because you're creating something for the screen that isn't tied to a printing process. But if it's tied to a printing process, we want to keep it in the 8-page sequence, which is also called 4 up. And so in this case, we are doing just a single design. That is why we have just 1 page in here. So we talked a little bit about that. Next, we set up our swatches, and our swatches are set up here in our swatch palette. Remember that you can always open a palette if you don't see one using the window drop down, and it is color swatches. Now, when we opened our swatch palette, we went into our Illustrator file and we selected our swatch from our style guide, and in this case, this one is 17-B4 as our true match color. You want to make sure in InDesign you are also matching your swatches, and so you can do that by going into new color swatch and changing this to a true match. And let's do 17-4B. There is my color, and I'm going to click OK, and it will add the color match swatch to my swatches library. So let's do that one more time. I'm going to go into my Illustrator file. I'm going to go to one of these colors, 34F. And so I'm going to go into my swatch library, add a new swatch, true match, 34-F. And there it is. And I'm going to add it, making sure that my swatches from my style guide are also my swatches inside of my InDesign file. Remember, color and shape are the most definable and recognizable elements of design, so we want to make sure. So just for the sake of the process, I'm going to add this brown to 7B3. So let's go in here and find 7B3. 7-B3. And there it is. So we added our swatches. I'm actually going to get rid of my other swatches. I'm going to keep black and white, and I'm going to do yellow, cyan, and magenta, which are the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, which are the color mixtures. And I'm going to get rid of the others so that I only have cyan, magenta, yellow, and black in my 3 swatches from my true match colors. So that was the first thing that we set up. And now, so that's number one. And then number two is we went into our properties and we set up our character styles. So I'm going to go ahead and select my headline text. Now remember, we went in, so I have my properties palette open over here. So if you do not have that palette open, let's go into Window Properties. And then with the Properties palette open, I'm going to go in and change the font to be my approved font from my style guide. So for me, I chose Avenir. Now, the headline in the template was set to 38 point with a 45 point leading. We're going to keep these size as the appropriate sizes. I'm going to also go in, I think, and I'm going to make the text my brown color. I'm going to go in and select the little T here. So I would have done the same thing if I double clicked on it. It would be the T here, and I'm going to set it to the true match color. I'm going to do that before I defined my headline style. So once we have this text box selected with our black selection arrow, our global selection arrow, I'm going to go over to the character styles and I'm going to add one. And I'm going to call it headline and hit return. And you'll notice that this now is defined over here as my headline text. And I'm going to do the same thing for my tagline. So I'm going to move this up. I'm going to change the style to Avenir. Just for the sake of the process, I'm going to make it Avenir bold. I'm going to make my text container a little bigger so you can see it. It's center aligned. So I'm going to keep the alignment as centered. I think I'm going to go in and change the color. So I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to go in to my fill and make sure it's my true match color. So I'm going to reset that, make sure it's my true match color. So let's pick the global selection arrow. So here it is. So here's my tagline. So I'm going to make that centered. And I'm going to make it Avenir, and I'm going to make it black. I'm going to keep it as the size, 13 point with 15.6 leading. And then I'm going to make it a new character style, and I'm going to call it tagline. Right? So I could actually take this one and pick tagline, and it would make it the same. Or I could pick it as headline, and it would make it big again. And so the last one we're going to do is this one. So this little plus means the container needs to be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to double click, highlight it. I'm going to make it Avenir. Book 10 point is fine. Let's change the color just for the sake of the process. Let's make it my true match blue. So now you can see that my blue is my support copy. So I'm going to add a character style and call it support copy. And so now I have headline, tagline, and support copy all set up as styles, character styles inside my document. So I have my Pantone colors or my true match colors, and I also have my fonts set up. So swatches have been defined, character styles have been defined. Now, we went in and we went into our master and we did file, place, and we placed our fall background. So I'm going to zoom out just a little bit, and we took our container and we drew a box to drop our picture in. Now, remember, we used now our global selection arrow and made our container fit to our bleed or red lines. And we made this one go across our gutter into our other margin. Now, once we do that, we have to use our direct select tool, and we have to select our image and make it at least as big as our container. So I'm going to make it bigger. So let's make sure that we make it bigger. Now, our container fits to our red lines. It goes over our fold and it fills our page. So let's see what that looks like. Oh, perfect. So now I'm going to move this out of the way. I'm going to move this out of the way. And I'm going to move this out of the way just so that you can see the elements we have so far. Now your image should bleed to the edge, bleed to this edge, bleed over here, and bleed over here. Remember, those are our bleed lines, the red lines. Now we're going to go back into our right master, and we're going to go into our Illustrator file. And remember, we took a copy of, so I'm just going to take a copy of my logo, Command C, right out of Illustrator. And InDesign, under my master, so we're in my master, right? We did Command V. And remember, it pasted it as an object. And remember, we don't want to be all the way down at the corner of the bleed. We don't want to be all the way down in the corner of the document. We want to be at least in the safety areas. Now, remember, global selection arrow selects the box, direct select or white arrow selects inside, and the last tool we learned about was the free transform. So I'm going to grab the corners of this and make it a little bit smaller, and I'm going to place it down in the corner with a little bit of wiggle room. So there it is down there. Now, remember, we also chose under the View drop-down to change our display performance to high quality, just to make sure that as we're designing, we're seeing what's called final output quality, what it would look like at 100%. Look how beautiful the leaves are. The logo looks great. Everything is clear. So 100% final output is 100% view right here. So we just want to make sure that we're just taking a look at the document in 100%. Now, these were the elements that we placed inside of our master. Everything else we put inside of our page number 1. So the next thing we did was we went in and we copied the turkey. So let's go in and find the old turkey image here. Turkey, here he is. So here's our turkey inside of Illustrator. We did Command C. We went back into our InDesign document, make sure we're on page number 1. We did Command V, so here's the old turkey. We switched over to our free transform tool. I like to do Shift Option, which means scale from the middle. So we're going to scale him down and stick the little turkey guy over here. So we kind of stuck our little turkey guy, go back to our global selection arrow to deselect. So there he is. Now, we also went in and we copied 3 pieces of candy. So let's go into our candy wrapper. So we're going to select the first one, this polka dot one. We're going to do Command C. I'm going to go back into InDesign and do Command V. We're going to switch to our transform. I'm going to do Shift Option to scale it down a little bit. I'm going to move it up to this side. And remember, we also went to the edge of the bounding box and rotated it a little bit. There we go. Go back to the global selection arrow and deselect. Then I'm going to go to Illustrator. I'm going to copy my second piece. I think I'm going to take this one, copy, go into InDesign. Remember, this is a container program. Let's move that on over. I'm going to go to Free Transform, do Shift Option. So I'm copying things out of other programs and bringing them into InDesign to compile them. So there's candy piece number 2. Go back to my global selection arrow and deselect. Then I'm going to go into Illustrator and copy my third piece. I think I did this one. So I'm going to copy that, go back into InDesign, paste my piece of candy, go into the free transform. I'm going to do Shift Option just to scale it down a little bit. I'm going to rotate it ever so slightly. And we all did kind of different kind of placement of the candy pieces. Go back to global selection arrow, and there we go. And so these are all vector grouped objects copied right out of Illustrator. This is on my master, so I can't click on it from page 1. The background is also in my master. Remember, we scaled both the bounding box and the image inside the bounding box to fill that space. Now, we also did file place, and we placed a photograph from our selection of images. I'm going to grab the clock tower, and I'm just going to place it in document 1. So, oh, it's huge. It's huge. This image is huge. Watch what happens. If I zoom out, it's gigantic. So let's find one that's a little bit, let me see if I have one that is a little bit smaller in size. What about like downtown? There it is. Now, we talked about the copy paste in technique. So I can actually use my rectangular ellipse X frame tool, and I'm going to hold down shift and draw a circle. So there's my container. Watch what happens if I select this and do copy and select my container and do edit paste into. It allows me to paste the picture right into my ellipse. And so I'm going to paste my picture inside of my box. Now, next class on Thursday, we're going to talk about how you can do things like add drop shadows to your containers, just like you can in Photoshop, so we can make three-dimensional objects. Let's do Control-Click, Effects, Drop Shadow, click OK, and we can actually make things 3D inside of InDesign, which is a really awesome thing. Now, we can also do drop shadows and all kinds of things in here, which is pretty cool. We can make a button out of it by converting that shape into a button. There's just so many really cool things you can do from control clicking an object inside of InDesign. Just remember, we want to stay away from the bleed line and the document edge. So we're just going to compose this a little bit. Now, we use the flyer that I posted in the announcement section to replace this copy. So I'm going to just type some copy in design using candy wrappers. And so we use the text from our image to create both the headline, the tagline, and we left it at the beginning of the support copy. So here is where we left. So I'm going to delete this one. Here is where we left our layout for class on Thursday. We're going to go in and adjust these icons using our true match colors. We're going to go in and do all kinds of additional little tweaks. Now, I like to sometimes view this by turning off the guides so that you can see what it looks like without all the extra stuff. That's kind of a nice way to see how your layout is looking. You can turn off the document and all the guides. You can also, so I'm going to turn off my guides. So I'm going to hide the guides here. And I'm going to also hide the frame edges, and watch what happens. It removes all the little boxes around everything. So this is what my layout looks like as a finished product based on the elements I copied in. It's starting to look really beautiful now without all the guides. Sometimes I'll actually keep the frame edges turned off and only have the document guides on. So let's go in and turn those back on so you can see them for layout purposes. So InDesign is a container program. It's really good to understand that there is a bleed line, there is a document line, and there are margin lines. It's also really important to know that under the color swatches, to set your style guide colors, your true match colors in your style guide, inside of your swatches in InDesign to make sure that you're using the colors for your brand. And thirdly, it's a good idea to set up your character styles for each of the sizes of your elements inside of your flyer design, your headline, your tagline, and your support copy. That way you can control it and make it your style guide font and your style guide colors. Then after that, it comes down to design, how you compose this image inside of your InDesign file. I hope this recording helped, gang. See you on Thursday.